an abstract artist, Elaine Daily-Birnbaum. She lives near me. She also lives in Madison, Wisconsin, my home state. And abstract art in particular, and this I think I've mentioned this previously also. Now that I've been judging some shows, and especially these abstract artists who submit more than one painting to a show, and I'll go through and their names aren't there, but they have like an ID number, so it's the same artist going through. And they'll submit 3 different abstract paintings, and they look like they were painted by 3 different artists. They're completely different style wise and color scheme wise, and to me that doesn't there's nothing wrong with experimenting, but when you're submitting to some of these bigger shows, I want to see somebody who has painted long enough that they have developed a consistent style that works for them, and they're working on that. When they're all over the place, to me that still speaks to someone who's a bit more of a novice. And Elaine Daily-Birnbaum, especially for abstract painting, that's really difficult to do. But as I go through these, and I recommend, I'll move this over so you can see her name up above here a little bit better. If you Google her name and just kind of see a bunch of images of her work, you'll be able to start to get a feeling that no matter what she's painting, it's hers. It's amazing, this style that she's developed. I just love it. The color palettes that she uses always seem to hold together. She doesn't stick to one simple color palette. Obviously, each painting is different, but she's got a real nice sense of color harmony in her paintings. They are always, subtle neutrals that work together with some slightly stronger, pure colors. And a lot of her work has these kind of large shapes in them, almost like trapezoids or whatever you want to call them. Several of them. This one isn't quite as large, but she makes a lot of use out of that particular shape in a lot of her work. And then she's got these beautiful little things going on around the rest of the painting that just kind of tell a story and make you want to dive into them and find out what's going on. She does a beautiful job of titling her work too. I think that's really important, and it's so odd, especially when you're seeing an abstract work. Most of the time, representational painting, they'll give it a title, but way too often an abstract work comes in untitled. With an abstract piece, you want to give the viewer some kind of idea of what you were thinking of, a little peek behind the curtain. I know maybe sometimes you just want to leave it up to interpretation and everybody's going to think something different, but I think for viewing pleasure, me personally, I love the fact that this says it's, treading water. As soon as I'm thinking of that, I'm starting to see, little figures in a deep pool of water, a body of water somewhere, and some beach colors. Another thing that kind of sets her paintings apart, and what I see that are these kind of odd stitched edges along these shapes. It's almost like it's fabric, the weaving life into things. And you'll see this as I go through here. But all those big empty shapes, and then these small little shapes are on the periphery. Here again, look at that kind of a stitched edge that she gets on here. I love that. And then these smaller shapes, again, often kind of oddly towards the periphery of the paintings many times. But these larger kind of trapezoidal type shapes that she takes advantage of. The shape things take. I like that title also. Seaside shanty. Again, all of a sudden you kind of get the feeling of a little bit of a landscape, a body of water. Look at that nice big shape that she uses, again, to her advantage, with all these little interesting colorful shapes around the periphery. She kind of uses those as almost little border boundary shapes to define that often. And great use, all these little lines too. But again, a nice color scheme, beautiful neutrals with these little splashes of bright colors. Just very interesting abstract paintings, again, that make you want to kind of linger a bit and notice more and more about them. Feels like home to me, the title of this one. I like that as well. Once again, notice the shapes, the stitched borders, and you can start to get a feeling when I'm going through these, when I pop some of these up that, wow, yeah, that's distinctly hers. It's in the telling. Another thing she uses a lot are these little kind of bulbous shapes through some of her paintings, almost like little balloons or bubbles or something, connected by lines going through. I'm not sure what that's all about. I have yet to talk to her about that, but I'd be curious to see, some of the symbolism in her shapes. Now, this is obviously a more colorful one than some of the others, but I think you'll agree that the color harmony and the color schemes she uses may be a bit intuitive, but they all really hold together well. Again, and the complementary colors, this intense orange that you see everywhere, the complement of that intense orange is this kind of turquoisey blue, and those little shapes are important. Finding hidden treasure, I love that too. Once again, you're kind of digging for treasure at the beach. It gives you a sense of the water and beach and rocks and the little treasure. Here's those little bulbous shapes again, and the stitched edge. It just gives a really cool energy to her paintings, and again, coming up with that style, so that when you're submitting to shows, people say, oh, that's Elaine Daily-Birnbaum. Not an easy thing to do. Big trapezoidal shape, interesting little things along the peripheries, smaller shapes down below. The truth at that time. Here's that little string of bubbles, shapes going up. Three sisters. A little string of bubbles here that you notice after the fact. This is an odd thing. It's almost like a skull shape down here. So, some people prefer representational painting. Some people obviously prefer abstract or whatever. Some people prefer, obviously a lot of people prefer tight still lifes and stuff, especially at the shows. But I like it all, and and again, I want the abstract paintings to be well designed, not just chaos and shapes everywhere. Okay, I think it's important when you're working with an abstract painting that you design the canvas well. You really make use of line and color and shape, and you have a balance of things, so the painting holds together. You have nice restful areas and energetic areas that balance each other out. Okay, she really knows what she's doing. She's one of the best ones out there, and it's obvious if you look at she's won a lot of awards at a lot of the big shows. What goes around comes around. A lot of the same little things that you're going to see in there. Here's that little string of bubbly shapes, stitching edges, the fabric of life, big trapezoidal shapes. Once again, all those elements in here. Enough. I kind of like that too. You're saying enough is enough. A lot of times when you're just have maybe a dark cloud hanging over you or something. Edging in. I just like that she puts a lot of these elements right down here in the corner too, even. It just kind of goes against a lot of what I say in my representational paintings. You don't want to draw the viewer's eye down to the corners. But again, she's kind of using these little interesting shapes to tell a story and to tie it all together and frame those nice big restful areas. I think she did this during the pandemic confinement. There's the little representational piece. Maybe the humanoid type piece way down in the corner while the rest of the world goes on around him. Anyways, really interesting work. I like it, and obviously a developed style. Like I said, if I just kind of went through all these quickly, you start to get a sense when you walk into a show, oh, that's Elaine's paintings. Easier said than done, people, for sure. All right, Nicolas Lopez is really an innovative young painter from Peru. Had a chance to meet him in Monza, Italy last year when I was there for an exhibition, but I've admired his work for a long time. He didn't always paint this style. He's been developing it for a while, and I love the it kind of my son, I do too. All of us like these Marvel movies, and at the end of one of the last ones, Endgame or something, where this guy, like the main villain, was gonna take out half the population of the Earth, of the universe, basically, and just kind of start over. He thought there was just too many people, and everybody that didn't make it or didn't make the cut just kind of faded away like an hourglass, in sand. That whole concept of dust to dust, and I love this kind of I don't know, the way Nicolas depicts the world, and there's a lot of structural things in him. A lot of times he's painting cityscapes and urban areas, but he kind of lends this impermanence to things with the way he paints this, almost like things are very temporary and still being swallowed up by the earth. It's a super unique style of painting. I'm sure he has things out there on YouTube and stuff. Every once in a while I see a live demo pop up by him on Instagram if you get a chance to see one. I moved out Nicolas Lopez. But this was in Monza when he was doing his demonstration, and he had a tripod that really swiveled a lot, and he was just constantly moving this thing around, tilting it and swirling it, and but he uses these big flat brushes like this initially, and he's using Daniel Smith. I don't know what kind of paint it is. It's just a dull gray, ivory black or something, but it's very granulating, and he uses that big brush initially to just kind of blocks in intuitively some big shapes. He was looking at an archway behind me here in the building, so that was his rough guide for what he was painting. But again, he just starts to intuitively put these big shapes on, and then he starts spraying them, and he gets these really cool effects. And then he, again, he's just that's still on the tripod. He's not holding it. He's just swiveling it around and directing all that water and paint, and that's how he gets those really cool, like that, all that granulating pigment. And again, it's just kind of like sands of the hourglass fading away. And it's just so cool how he does that, not just in natural settings where it would lend itself a little bit more with trees and water or whatever, but actually in buildings. It just kind of gives it the feeling, like I said, of everything very temporary and crumbling away. I love that painting. The fact that he's just using, black on his paintings makes design a lot like value studies. It makes that even a more heightened importance when you don't have color to direct the viewer's eye. So he's thinking and planning all the time, and again, at some point it just becomes intuitive. You can tell when you watch him, it's like, oh, I need a dark shape here to balance out that dark shape, and he just starts popping things in there and then spraying them, and if it's too much, he'll dab it out with a sponge and spray some more water and then drop it in again. And so he's just constantly working in and out of these areas when he's painting. This is one, it felt a little bit unusual when I was going through it, and all of a sudden I realized it's because it's kind of indicating some figures in here, and it's not very common for him, actually, to despite the fact that he does a lot of paintings with structures and cityscapes and stuff. He doesn't usually add little figures in his paintings. He concentrates more on the big shapes, but he's actually indicated a little sign of life in this one. This is more typical of him. Obviously, somewhere in a European street scene with these buildings and stuff, but no sense of humans anywhere. The zombie apocalypse or something. It's just such an emotional way of painting. I love it, like I said, and I'm hoping that some of you weren't aware of him initially. That's one of my biggest goals in doing this, is just to kind of make some of you aware of these different styles, different ways of painting. Another really cool one where it's just like everything is drifting off. That treatment of the sand down below, fading, dropping in some more darks, fading. After it dries, he can come in and put these little pockets in where he feels he needs them. Not a sign of a human anywhere. that speaks to me too. I think I've mentioned that previously on some critiques, that there's some artists that feel that they have to pop a figure in a red sweater in every painting for some reason. It just drives me nuts. You don't have to have people in all your paintings. And that's another cool one. A little bit of an indication of figures in there, but not much. This is almost like a ghostly figure here. He just lets your brain fill in the rest, you know, fill in the story, which I love. And this is one that I bought from him in Monza, so I own this one too. I had to have one of his paintings. It's not a very large one. I didn't come home with big paintings, but I've got a nice example of his work. Let's check him out, Nicolas Lopez. All right, Chris Krupinski, she wins awards in a lot of the big shows, kind of a quantum leap from some of the earlier artists I was talking about. But I wanted to spotlight her also because, you know, when you are painting very realistic still lifes, and one of my issues that I've always talked about that is, you know, you walk in and walk through a show and there's a lot of these tight still lifes. I don't know who painted what. You know, there's not enough emotion in it, or, you know, there's not enough of the individual artist. It's very, you know, technically sound and rendered and impressive in that regard. But it could have been painted by anybody who paints realistically. But Chris, for a few different reasons, normally I see her painting and that's Chris. And one of the main things is a long time ago she started painting from this kind of an aerial viewpoint, vantage point, looking down on her subject. And that was a brilliant move on her part, I think, because, again, in order to stand out in some of these shows and have a recognizable style, it's a little bit easier when you're painting more expressively, the color choices you make and the brushstrokes you make. But when you're painting tightly, it's real difficult to have a recognizable style, and Chris definitely does after all these years. She utilizes complementary color schemes brilliantly also, orange and blue, and then the greens in there also, but the little orange Cheez-Its. I love a Swiss cheese, that title spelling cheese like the Cheez-It snacks. Southwest shadows, southwestern color scheme, looking straight down on things. Most of her paintings incorporate fruit, not all. Some of them are beer and Cheez-Its and crackers, but the vast majority of hers incorporate fruit somehow. She loves these tablecloths underneath them, and she uses these tablecloths brilliantly also in the design. The lines just kind of weaving in and out of the painting and leading the viewer's eye in and stuff. They're not just randomly placed. It's almost like if you were just doing an abstract painting, how you would use some of these lines of blue and orange to just kind of paint and bring the viewer's eye in and through the painting. She organizes her setups very professionally. Her designs. Another orange and blue complementary color scheme. This striped tablecloth makes an appearance in a lot of her paintings too, and that also helps again make her work a little bit recognizable. Very convincing, very well designed. That lemon is pointing to that lemon, the lemon is pointing to that. Yes, none of that's by accident. Green and red, complementary colors. She's just an incredible renderer of fruit. Looks like you could just pluck it right out of there and eat it. Again, the striped tablecloth. One without fruit again, back to Friday night. I like that. Beer and popcorn. But even this has a bit of a, that violety blue and gold, ochre gold color scheme playing off of each other. These round elements all kind of playing off of each other and adding a sense of balance and harmony to the painting. Even though there's no fruit in there, she's still, it's easier when you're dealing with fruit, all these similar shapes, to put them around and create balance. When you're dealing with things like this, it's a little bit more difficult. So that is important that she's using the shape of the bowl and the top of the bottle and the top of the glass. Like I said, none of that is by accident. There's the striped tablecloth making the appearance again. Just an incredible use of values and shadows and shapes. That was a little bit different for her with the asparagus, cooking with wine. I really like this one. That was something unique that I found online. Wanted to include that one for sure. But again, no fruit, but the round shapes of the eggs in the wine glass kind of help balance out all the linear shapes of the asparagus. Bittersweet. Okay, so once again, I think if you just once you are familiar with this artist's work and you start seeing things pop up, that aerial vantage point, you just start to know that that's a Chris Krupinski painting. And kudos to her for her success. When I judged the Transparent Watercolor Society show, I didn't realize this, but they had, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 artists who had won or been in the show enough times. I think you had to be in the show like 20 times to be a TWSA master, and the previous 9 artists were all men. She was the first woman. Bravo. It's about time to get accepted into that show 20 times and become a TWSA master. And she's just a sweet, sweet lady too. A friend also. Hi, my name's Andy Evansen. Over the course of this year, I'll be discussing a lot of ways to improve your paintings with a focus on watercolor in particular. Watercolor is a popular medium, but there are technical issues that can become stumbling blocks during the learning process. The painting becomes a lot more fun once you've solved them and can start refining your craft. I'll cover topics that are unique to watercolor, such as painting wet and wet, the timing and consistency of your washes, the importance of drawing and negative shape making, and more. I'll also be talking a lot about how vital it is to have a plan. The transparent nature of watercolor means you're limited in the amount of fixing you can do once you've started, and indecisiveness, that's what leads to the weak, muddy paintings. Because this course spans a calendar year, you'll be able to see me painting outdoors on location as well as in the studio. We can talk about the differences and similarities of both. I've taught dozens of 3 to 5 day workshops, and most of the time, just as students are starting to figure things out, it's time to say goodbye. This course through Tucson Art Academy Online allows me to work with you for an entire year, so we'll be able to get into things that just aren't possible in a 4-day workshop. As an artist who also loves to teach, I'm really excited about the possibilities of this. I hope you'll join me.